El término justicia ambiental se escucha más frecuentemente estos días. Justicia ambiental es ayudar a las comunidades de menos recursos a tener acceso a agua potable, comida de calidad y un medio ambiente más limpio. Y por primera vez el gobierno federal cuenta con una oficina encargada de atender esos problemas. Jessica Fernández conversó con su encargada, Jalonne White-Newsome, y esto fue lo que nos explicó.
There are communities across this country that cannot breathe clean air, that don't have access to fresh water, that are literally living in environments that are hazardous to their health. And so because this administration has prioritized environmental justice, something that has been long overdue, we have an opportunity now at this moment to again begin to address these historical legacy environmental injustice issues across this country.
What statistics do you have that may illustrate that communities of color are mostly impacted by environmental injustice?
Our low-income communities, our communities of color, our indigenous communities have suffered more from pollution. They tend to live closer to polluting facilities, whether it be coal-fired power plants or other industry. They tend to not have access to the same clean water because of a lack of infrastructure or the disintegration or lack of maintenance around water infrastructure, so our pipes that are under the ground. The fact that in many ways, a lot of our communities don't have access to fresh food and grocery stores, so they can, again, stay healthy and eat good food. But the main thing to get across is that this is not something that is new. It is not an unfamiliar trend. I think, and I'm very grateful that this administration is amplifying this message, and now environmental justice is something that everyone is more aware of. And so now that we've kind of built this awareness, it's time to take action.
What's the immediate impact that your office intends to have on those citizens living in environmentally compromised communities?
You know, unfortunately, I would love to say that there is a lot of immediate impact, but when you're trying to deconstruct years and decades of the impact of environmental racism, I would feel silly saying that we have immediate impact. But what I will say is, one of the major pieces when we talk about advancing environmental justice is really the recognition that there is environmental injustice happening, because oftentimes it has gone kind of undercover and not amplified and ignored. And so I think one of the things, by raising environmental justice as one of the priorities for not only the Council on Environmental Quality, but as a part of the president's agenda, is that we can no longer look past and ignore this. And I think oftentimes communities who have been fighting for environmental justice for years.
What role must the private sector play to support your efforts at the Environmental Justice Office?
This environmental justice thing cannot be done by government. It can't be done by one community organization. We have to make sure that all of the folks, the institutions that have been a part of creating the problem, help us solve the problem. So I think one of the main challenges has been, again, people on an industry understanding, one, what environmental justice is, and then what can be their role, and figuring out what are the ways that we can not only mitigate or make less negative our impact on this community, but actually how we can begin to help fortify the community. So when we think about climate resilience and the role, for example, of the private sector, are there opportunities, when there's a blackout, that the private sector is able to provide resources for lower resource or underprivileged communities? Can it be the creation of a solar powered generation station in a community, again, that is rural and might not have access to other power supply sources? So there are many ways that the private sector can help.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jalonne White-Newsome, for taking the time to speak to us today here at the Weather Channel.